Have you ever wondered if ice, often associated with cold, emptiness, and oblivion, might actually conceal something else? Many consider it a symbol of disappearance, an endless white desert where time seems to stop and life freezes forever. In our minds, ice is associated with silent witnesses of the past, huge glaciers that, as we believe, only preserve cold and silence, showing no activity. But what if all this is just an illusion? The greatest lie we tell ourselves to justify our ignorance? What if ice is not a grave of vanished civilizations or a dead void, but rather the most perfect and reliable sarcophagus created by nature? Not just a cold mass, but a unique archive holding entire eras, stories, and secrets. Imagine a cryogenic storage, something like a giant hard drive on which stories are recorded that we were never meant to know. Stories of forgotten empires, bloody massacres, prehistoric monsters, invisible threats that are now slowly but surely beginning to awaken and thaw. All this is not just fantasy or hypothesis. These are chronicles of awakening hidden beneath the ice, and we cannot predict what exactly will awaken next. Before us is a window into the depths of history, sealed in eternal frost, and each time the ice melts, we open new pages of ancient mysteries. Before we delve into the main part of our story, I would like to ask for a bit of your attention. Your support, expressed in the form of a like or subscription, will be an important inspiration and gratitude for the work done. Thank you for your understanding and trust. In the 20th year, that is, in 2014, scientists made a truly astonishing discovery in the Siberian permafrost region. They discovered a virus that turned out to be unusual, gigantic in size and visible in a regular light microscope. This virus, despite 30,000 years having passed, was still alive and capable of infecting. It was named Pythovirus sibericum. It is important to emphasize that it was safe for humans, but this discovery posed the main question to scientists. What else is hidden in these icy depths? What other dangerous or mysterious creatures lie dormant in the icy depths, waiting for their time? Global warming is slowly but surely turning cryogenic chambers into dangerous repositories from which ancient nightmares of the Ice Age may emerge. These are not just stories about discoveries in the ice. These are chronicles of awakening, evidence that beneath the layer of ice lie not only dangers, but entire worlds we never suspected. And we do not know what exactly will awaken next. All these discoveries are like alarming signals, warning of possible catastrophes or stunning discoveries that could change our understanding of history. Let's begin our story with an object that seems to be taken straight from the Norse sagas. An artifact so unusual and perfect that it's hard to believe it truly exists. It looks as if it were part of a set from a fantasy film rather than a real archaeological find. This happened in 2017 in the mountains of southern Norway. Two friends, avid climbers, set off for a high plateau located at an altitude of more than 1,500 meters. Their path led through a harsh, lifeless landscape dominated by stone, moss, and eternal ice. There were no trees, trails, or signs of human presence, only nature in its pristine and cold form. And suddenly, among the boulders, they noticed something astonishing. A handle that, despite the rust, was unmistakably recognizable. The history of how people honored their heroes goes back centuries. In ancient times, warriors were usually buried either in specially constructed mounds or in ships. Such burial structures were something like stone or wooden tombs, located on elevations or in specially prepared places. However, it is important to note that such burials were never arranged on the tops of mountain ridges, where the peaks were bare and devoid of vegetation. Why was this the case? Why did mighty warriors, who should have been honored and respected for their bravery and strength, not find their final resting places in these locations? One popular hypothesis explaining the appearance of the mysterious artifact, a sword found on the peak of an icy mountain, is sheer coincidence. Perhaps this person was a hunter or traveler who got lost in a snowstorm. In a blizzard that suddenly caught him in the highlands, he might have lost his bearings, and his clothing and body eventually deteriorated under harsh conditions, leaving only a sturdy blade, aptly and firmly fixed in stone or ice. However, this version seems unlikely because an experienced mountaineer, who presumably would have dared to climb so high, would not have left his main means of protection and survival, a sword in such a dangerous and lifeless place? There is also a more intriguing, yet no less mysterious hypothesis related to ancient rituals. In Norse mythology, where mountains and peaks were considered sacred places, the abode of gods and giants, there was a tradition of leaving something important in these places. Perhaps the left sword was part of a ritual, as a sacrificial offering to the deities. Maybe it was a votive gift that warriors brought after a victory in battle or in memory of a fallen comrade. Perhaps a person climbed to the top of the world to leave there the most precious thing he had, a symbol of his faith, grief, or gratitude. This entire story seems to embody a belief in supernatural forces, the power of fate, and memory. Of course, we will never know for sure what exactly was behind this act, but that solitary sword found among the icy peaks is not just a piece of rusty metal. It is a frozen-in-time symbol, a materialized enigma. It is like a frozen gesture, suspended in eternity, a tale of honor, faith, or despair, conveyed without a single word. This sword holds a special place in our imagination because it is a vivid symbol of what the ice preserves. Not just an object, it connects entire worlds that we can only speculate about. It is part of a story hidden within the icy layers, and every time we look at it, we seem to plunge into the past, into distant times full of heroism and tragedy. Moving to another era, we are transported to one of the most tragic and little-known pages of history, the front of the First World War, but not in Western Europe, rather on the Italian-Austrian front. This was not an ordinary front, covered in mud and blood like in Flanders, but a mountainous one, with altitudes reaching up to 3,500 meters. Here unfolded a war unique in its complexity and danger, which became known as the White War. For several years, Italian and Austro-Hungarian soldiers fought not only each other but also a more formidable enemy, nature. They faced harsh elements, cold that could drop to minus 30 degrees, avalanches and glaciers that turned into deadly traps. In these conditions, trenches were built in the ice, tunnels were carved into glaciers, and artillery and ammunition had to be hauled up sheer cliffs, which was an enormous physical strain. The temperature here could plummet to their personal belongings, such as spoons, combs, and even love letters, were so well preserved that it seemed as if they had been left there just yesterday. These finds are becoming more frequent and astonishing with each new discovery. Sometimes entire barracks, weapon depots, kilometers of barbed wire, and unexploded ordnance emerge from beneath the thick layer of ice, posing a dangerous threat when accidentally brought onto tourist routes. The glaciers not only return bodies to the surface, but they also return memory. A memory of a forgotten war in which people performed incredible feats and died terrible deaths in an icy hell. These frozen bodies of soldiers occupy the 9th place on our list of the most mysterious archaeological finds because they are not just remains. They are ghosts of the past, seemingly looking at us with silent reproach, reminding us of the madness of war and that even eternal ice cannot keep secrets forever. Now we delve even deeper into the icy abyss of history, to one of the most enigmatic pages of the era of great geographical discoveries. This is the story of a doomed expedition, of 2 ships trapped in the ice, and of the mummy of a young sailor, which after 140 years revealed the secret of their demise. In the 20th century, in the year 94, a team led by an anthropologist named Owen Beatty decided to exhume the bodies of 3 sailors buried on Beachy Island during the early months of the expedition. They hoped to find the cause of death in their remains and solve the mystery of their disappearance. One of these sailors was a 20-year-old young man named John Torrington, originally from Cochig. When the scientists opened his coffin, which had been dug into the permafrost, they stopped in horror. They were not looking at a skeleton, but a man. Torrington's body was almost perfectly preserved. His skin, muscles, even eyelashes and blue eyes remained intact. He lay covered with shavings with a pillow under his head, as if he had just fallen asleep, untouched by years or cold. The scientists were able to conduct a full autopsy. They determined that the young man had died of pneumonia, but this was only part of the story. Analyses of his hair and bones showed that the lead content was 11 times higher than normal, which shocked the researchers. And then all the pieces of the puzzle came together. The provisions for Franklin's expedition were stored in tin cans sealed with lead solder. But studies showed that the soldering was done extremely poorly, and lead was leaching into the food. Over several months, the crew was slowly but surely poisoning themselves with lead. Lead poisoning causes weakness, paranoia, loss of sanity, and even death. Thus, the cause of the young men's and the entire expedition's demise was hidden in the mistakes made in preparation and nutrition, making the tragedy even more mysterious and horrifying. Everything that weakens our immune system often becomes the cause of tragedies, and it is often the key to unraveling the most mysterious events of the past. It is likely that this factor played a crucial role in the fate of the experienced, strong sailors who ventured into the harsh and dangerous conditions of the Arctic. These men were well prepared, with extensive experience and knowledge, but even they could not survive the cold trials of nature. Their fates were cut short not only by hunger or terrible conditions, but also because their bodies, subjected to toxic substances, began to deteriorate from within. The poison apparently caused not just exhaustion, but a deep weakening of the immune system, making them vulnerable to any diseases and even mental disorders. The body of one of them, John Torrington, became a vital clue in this mysterious story. This corpse, lying in the ice for a whole 140 years, literally became the key to the mystery because it could tell much more about what happened than all the rescue expeditions combined. His remains became the main witness in the case of the Franklin expedition's demise, which for a long time remained one of the most enigmatic pages in the history of polar exploration. This story ranks 8th among all mysteries because it is a vivid example of how ice can become a time machine, preserving not just a body, but a crucial piece of evidence capable of rewriting history and uncovering a crime where the culprit was not a person, but a deadly metal hidden inside an ordinary tin can. This astonishing find shows that even the most mundane objects can conceal secrets capable of changing the course of history. Moving from the cold northern latitudes, we shift to the heart of Asia, to the mysterious and desolate Ukok Plateau, located in the Altai Mountains. This place, surrounded on all sides by winds and windstorms, serves as a border between several countries: Russia, China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan. It was here in the distant year of 1993 that a team led by Novosibirsk archaeologist Natalia Polosmak made an archaeological discovery that shocked the world and caused a wide resonance. They discovered a burial that became a true sensation: the Princess of Ukok. This was the burial of a noblewoman, a representative of the ancient Paseric nomadic culture that inhabited these lands about 25 centuries ago. The grave was a large log structure carefully embedded in the permafrost, preserving her remains in a unique state. But the most astonishing aspect was that in ancient times, water had seeped into this kurgan, which then froze, turning the grave into an icy lens. This natural phenomenon preserved everything inside, like amber, even the tiniest details. When scientists melted the ice, they were presented with a truly incredible sight. Inside the hollowed-out larch log that served as a coffin lay the mummy of a young woman, about 25 years old. Beside her were buried 6 horses, fully equipped and prepared for the afterlife journey, indicating her high status and wealth. On a special table were vessels with remnants of food. Everything was prepared for her transition to another world. But most importantly, the woman herself attracted everyone's attention with her appearance. She was dressed in a long woolen skirt and a fine silk blouse, which apparently had been brought from distant China or India. Silk, so expensive and rare, was proof of her high standing in society. On her head was an elaborate, nearly meter-long wig, with a headdress adorned with gold plates and wooden griffin figures, indicating her status and wealth. But the most surprising discovery came when scientists removed her clothing. Their attention was drawn to the fact that she likely fell from a horse and sustained severe injuries, which significantly worsened her health and ultimately led to her death. In her grave, a vessel with cannabis was found, suggesting that she likely used this plant to alleviate her suffering and relieve pain. However, this story does not end there. After the mummy was unearthed and transported to the city of Novosibirsk for scientific research, unusual and tragic events began to occur in Altai. A strong earthquake, a flood, and a crop failure were recorded. The local residents, for whom the Ukok Plateau is a sacred place and the progenitor of their people, Princess Akadine, known as the White Lady, is a sanctuary and a symbol of their culture, believed that the scientists had disturbed her peace. They claimed that such actions had provoked the wrath of the progenitor's spirit and brought a curse upon their lands. For many years, there was a struggle to return the mummy to her homeland, to her historical land. It was only in 2012, after long disputes and negotiations, that the princess was returned to Altai. A special mausoleum was built for her, which was placed in the National Museum of the city of Gorno-Altaysk. This story is not just a tale of archaeological excavations. It is a story of the clash between two completely different worlds. The world of science, for which the mummy is a valuable object for research and study, and the world of traditional culture, for which the mummy is a sacred relic and part of spiritual heritage. The so-called Siberian Ice Maiden, with her tattoos that today look like the work of modern tattoo artists, ranks 7th among the most famous archaeological finds. She is not just a mummy, but a living, or rather, perfectly preserved dead body, invaluable evidence that ancient civilizations, which we are accustomed to considering primitive, possessed a complex culture, art, and spiritual life that we are only beginning to truly discover and understand. We are moving from studying the history of humanity to exploring the history of the planet itself, to an era when giant creatures dominated the Earth and humans were just one of many species struggling for survival. We are venturing into the distant glacial past. In 2010, on the shores of the Laptov Sea in Yakutia, local tusk hunters discovered an astonishing object: the carcass of a mammoth calf frozen in permafrost. In Siberia, mammoth finds were not uncommon, but this young mammoth, named Yuka after the local community, was special. Its preserved carcass looked as if it had died just a few days ago, not 39,000 years ago. Its reddish fur, trunk, eyes, internal organs, everything was intact. Scientists even managed to extract liquid blood from its body, which caused a worldwide sensation. Yuka was a young female, approximately 6 to 9 years old at the time of death. Her height was about 1 meter 65 centimeters. But the most astonishing aspect was the circumstances of her death. The mammoth calf's body bore long, even cuts made by a sharp tool, as well as tooth and claw marks from large predators, most likely cave lions. This allowed specialists to reconstruct the dramatic scene that unfolded 39,000 years ago. Most likely, Yuka got stuck in a swampy area or fell into a crack that had become vulnerable and weak at that moment. She was attacked by predators, leaving numerous wounds and injuries. However, something unusual then happened. Someone drove the predators away, and that someone turned out to be humans, ancient hunters. Seizing the moment, they butchered part of the carcass of the still living or just killed mammoth, taking the most valuable parts, meat and fat. Then, for unknown reasons, they left the rest of the carcass, which was a window into the mysterious and enigmatic world of human relationships with the ancient, vanished megafauna of the Ice Age. Here we see clear and compelling evidence that our ancestors did not just collect mammoth bones left in the ground. They hunted these giants, engaging in direct and often dangerous confrontations with the most powerful creatures of that time. These findings are not a coincidence, but evidence that ancient people possessed the skills and courage necessary to hunt mammoths, and that every tusk or bone found is a silent reminder of those times when humans and nature existed in a tense but important harmony. However, the most important thing Yuka brought with her is not just another archaeological find or a subject for scientific research, but a true revolution in the world of science and technology. She became a symbol of the return of long-forgotten human dreams, dreams of the possibility of resurrecting extinct species, dreams of cloning, to bring back to Earth those animals that history seemed to have forever taken into eternity. The cells extracted from her body were so well preserved that scientists worldwide seriously discussed the possibility of resurrecting the woolly mammoth. This project, Mammoth Revival, has become one of the hottest topics in scientific circles, evoking both excitement and debate. The idea is to take the nucleus from Yuka's cell and transplant it into the egg cell of a modern elephant, her closest relative. Or, more realistically, to edit the elephant's genome by inserting mammoth genes responsible for its wool, fat layer, and cold resistance. Such a hybrid, called a mammoth, could become a new living being, combining traits of both species. These experiments are already underway in Harvard laboratories and scientific centers in Japan, and although the birth of the first mammoth calf is still far off, Yuka has given hope and a real chance. Hope to correct the mistake of the past, to bring back to our planet a species that disappeared due to climate change caused by human activity. But along with this arises one of the most complex ethical questions, requiring careful and deep consideration. Do we have the right to play God, interfering with natural processes and the fate of living beings? Is the modern planet ready to once again accommodate these giants? Could the return of mammoths become a dangerous experiment, leading to unpredictable consequences? Might we release ancient diseases from the icy test tube along with them? Diseases for which modern animals and humans have virtually no immunity? The mammoth Yuka holds a special place in this context, not only because it is the best preserved mammoth carcass in history, but because it has become a key to a future that simultaneously entices with its possibility and provokes anxiety. This unique specimen is a symbol of hope and danger, a bridge between the past and the future. We have arrived at the most alarming and simultaneously relevant part of our discussion. Up until this point, we have spoken about the past preserved for us by ice, about ancient people, mammoths, and epochs long gone. Now we speak of a future that ice might release to destroy our civilization. We are talking about microbes and viruses hidden in the permafrost, those ancient microorganisms that have slept for millennia in icy depths, remaining in a frozen state, and which may awaken again. In August of 1666, on the Yamal Peninsula in Siberia, a concerning situation occurred. This time, an extraordinary heat wave caused temperatures to rise to 35 degrees Celsius, which was extreme for the Siberian tundra. As a result, the permafrost, which had remained immobile since the last ice age, began to thaw. Scientists studying samples of ancient ice extracted from Siberian permafrost often encounter truly astonishing and even shocking discoveries. In 2014, a group of French virologists managed to revive and bring back to life a giant virus known as Pythovirus sibericum, which had lain in frozen ice for 30,000 years. This virus is so large and unusual that it can be seen under a regular microscope without much effort, and its genetic code is more complex than that of some bacteria. Fortunately, this virus exclusively infects a specific type, amoebas or marine crustaceans, and poses no threat to humans. However, the significance of this discovery lies in the fact that it confirmed that viruses can retain their infectious capability and viability for tens of thousands of years, preserved in permafrost. In the following year, 2015, the same team of scientists discovered another ancient virus, Mollivirus sibericum, which was also found in ice samples, and the list of such discoveries continues to grow. All of this leads scientists to important assumptions. Within the layers of permafrost, there may be pathogens of ancient diseases that caused pandemics in the distant past and wiped out entire populations of our ancestors. For example, scientists suggest that these layers may contain traces of the Spanish flu virus, which claimed millions of lives in the early 20th century. Estimates range in the tens of millions. Its remnants were found in bodies buried in the permafrost in Alaska. What if these same layers hide traces of smallpox or even diseases that affected Neanderthals and other extinct ancient humans, about which we know nothing at all? All of this is cause for serious concern, as global warming is actively changing the climatic conditions in the Arctic. The gradual melting of ice and permafrost is turning this region into a kind of ticking time bomb. As the ice sheets melt, ancient pathogens trapped inside begin to be released. They enter rivers and oceans, are spread by birds traveling long distances, and may one day be capable of infecting humans. This is not a Hollywood movie scenario or a science fiction fantasy. It's a very real and scientifically calculated threat. The anthrax outbreak in Yamal was just the first alarming signal, a reminder that the danger is already near. The icy Pandora's box, containing many dangerous viruses and bacteria, has already begun to open, and thus this invisible threat ranks fifth on our list of the most pressing issues. There are stories that achieve mythic status even during the lifetimes of their participants. One of them is the legend of Sir Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition on the ship Endurance. This story is one of the most astonishing and inspiring in the history of polar exploration. It tells of the greatest battle for survival in the lifeless and icy hell. But for more than a century, this story remained without an ending, as its main character, the ship itself, Endurance, was considered forever lost and buried under the ice masses in the relentless desert of the Southern Ocean. It all began in 1914 when Shackleton set out for Antarctica with the ambitious goal of crossing the entire continent on foot, covering thousands of kilometers of icy expanses. His ship, a three-masted wooden barkentine named Endurance, was specially built for the extreme conditions of polar regions. However, Antarctica does not forgive manifestations of audacity and overconfidence. By early 1915, the ship was trapped in powerful pack ice, and the location of the famous ship Endurance was lost in time and space, remaining a mystery to scientists and explorers. This ship, once faithfully serving in expeditions to the southern poles, sank to the ocean floor at a depth of about 3,000 meters. In those places where it rests, an almost year-round impenetrable icy cover prevails, making this part of the world inaccessible and very dangerous for any person. That is why finding the vanished vessel seemed almost impossible. Numerous attempts, dozens of expeditions equipped with the most modern means, all ended in failure. But in March 2022, something happened that no one expected and almost no one believed in anymore. At that moment, an international expedition named Endurance 22 took the stage. Using the most advanced underwater drones and robotic devices, scientists and researchers began their search. After several weeks of painstaking and difficult searching, their efforts finally bore fruit. On the monitors of their technical devices appeared an image that stunned all the participants of the expedition. There, at a depth of 3,000 meters, in absolute darkness and cold, they saw what seemed impossible: Endurance standing upright on the ocean floor. The ship was so well preserved that it seemed as if it hadn't disappeared more than 107 years ago, but was standing there in perfect order. The cold waters of Antarctica, devoid of oxygen and rich in sub-zero temperatures, practically prevented the development of shipworms and other destructive organisms, which ensured the ship's preservation in such magnificent condition as no museum could. The ship's masts, although broken, still lie nearby, and the hull itself is intact. On the stern, carved decorations are visible, giving the ship a special elegance and grandeur. The name of the ship, Endurance, is readable as if it was written yesterday, immediately and clearly. The wheel and portholes remain in their places, as if the ship's crew had recently left it. One can look inside, and there, in the dark and quiet compartments, notice dishes, boots, tools, and equipment left by the crew in haste more than a century ago. This is not just a shipwreck, it is a ghost ship, frozen in space and time, as if caught in the moment of tragedy. The discovery of the sunken Endurance is not only an archaeological find, but a symbol of the completion of a great and dramatic story. It is a tribute to the courage of the crew, especially Captain Shackleton and his men, who did not give up in the face of harsh conditions and dangers. This moment ranks fourth in significance because it combines legendary past and modern technological achievements. It is a story of how ice first became the cause of demise and then the means of preservation. It took the ship from people, but at the same time preserved it for future generations in its pristine form. By turning the site of the tragedy into a unique underwater museum, we are convinced that there are no more blank spots on the maps of our planet, that satellites see everything. However, this is not the case. The largest continent, Antarctica, is 98% covered by an ice sheet, with an average thickness of 2 kilometers. And what lies beneath this gigantic icy blanket? For a long time, we could only guess and fantasize. During the International Geophysical Year, Soviet scientists, conducting flights over one of the most inaccessible and mysterious regions of East Antarctica, recorded something truly incredible using seismic instruments. Their sensors, scanning the ice mass, outlined the precise contours of a gigantic mountain range extending beneath the ice layer for many kilometers. This discovery shocked the entire scientific community. These mountains are about 1 billion years old. Over such a long period, they should have completely disappeared due to constant and continuous erosion, turning into soft, gentle hills that easily blend with the surrounding landscape. Yet they appear as if they were just formed, as if yesterday. This unusual preservation astonishes scientists and drives their desire to understand the true history of these ancient formations. Recent research and fresh data have allowed specialists to construct a more complex and detailed theory of their origin and development. It turned out that the Gamburtsev Mountains indeed formed about 1 billion years ago as a result of the collision of ancient continents, which caused a powerful uplift of mountain ranges. After this time, they were subjected to prolonged erosion, which should have significantly worn them down. However, about 250 million years ago, when the supercontinent Gondwana began to break apart, a rift, an area of crustal extension, formed in the region of these mountains. As a result of this process, the ancient roots of the mountains were uplifted again, allowing them to maintain their height and sharp contours. Then approximately 34 million years ago, when Antarctica began to cool and transform into an icy continent, the first glaciers started forming on the peaks of these mountains. These ice caps, like natural preservatives, covered the mountains and protected them from further erosion, preserving their youthful and sharp relief. Thanks to this unique combination of natural processes, the Gamburtsev Mountains have become not just a geological phenomenon, but a true keeper of Earth's ancient history. They play a key role in the planet's climate system, as it was on their peaks that the giant East Antarctic ice sheet originated, which today contains enough water to raise global sea levels by about 60 meters. Understanding the mechanisms of this ice sheet's formation and its response to global warming has become crucial for assessing the future of the entire planet. Within this ice cover lie the ghosts of the past, mountains that hold the keys to understanding how such a massive ice sheet forms and develops. These mountains rank third in significance among planetary-scale discoveries because they reveal how little humanity knows about its own world and its history. This discovery prompts a re-evaluation of our understanding of Earth's dynamics and how little has been studied and understood about the processes occurring beneath our feet. We have arrived at the most human and simultaneously the most brutal chapter of this story. This is not just an archaeological find, but a crime scene approximately 5,300 years old. In 1991, in the Utstal Alps, a group of German tourists stumbled upon a mysterious mummy in a melting glacier. Initially, everyone thought it was a lost and frozen mountaineer. However, it soon became clear that this person had died many thousands of years before their time. He was named Otzi, and this find became a true scientific sensation, as the mummy was perfectly preserved, with clothing, weapons, and tools characteristic of the Copper Age. For the first 10 years, scientists believed he was a victim of the elements, lost in the mountains and perished from the cold. But in 2001, a chance X-ray completely overturned the entire picture. A flint arrowhead was discovered in Otzi's left shoulder blade, clearly embedded in his body. This meant he was killed by a shot in the back. This archaeological find instantly became the oldest and simultaneously one of the most mysterious criminal stories in world archaeology. Scientists turned into detectives who, step by step, using the most modern technologies, began to reconstruct the last hours of this man's life. And the picture that emerges is astonishing and deserves comparison to a Hollywood thriller. Analysis of pollen found on Otzi suggests he was not a victim at all. He was a true warrior, a man who knew how to fight for his life and honor. In those moments, he fought several opponents at once, demonstrating not only strength and agility, but also resilience. He might have killed or wounded one of them, and possibly tried to save a wounded comrade whose blood remained on his clothing, evidence of a fierce battle that had taken place very recently. So, let's try to reconstruct the sequence of events. Down in the valley, a brutal fight flares up in which Otzi displays heroism and skill, defeating his enemies. However, he realizes this is not the end, and the danger is not yet over. He understands that the enemies might return, so he decides to flee. His path leads to the mountains, and he attempts to escape through the pass, hoping to hide in the inaccessible heights. Exhausted and worn out, he takes a break in a hollow to catch his breath and eat. Analysis of his stomach contents shows that his last meal was the meat of an alpine ibex from Laki, a catch obtained in hard-to-reach places. He thinks he has shaken off his pursuers, and at that moment, an arrow suddenly strikes him. The shot was fired from behind, from a distance of about 30 meters. It was an execution, carried out without warning, as if the final point in this conflict. But the main question remains unanswered. Why? Why did this story end this way? Who was Otzi? His identity, his fate. His copper axe is not just a weapon, but a symbol of power and strength, an embodiment of an era when metal was rare and highly valued. In the time he lived, such an axe was the most important attribute of a leader, a person who held the fate of the tribe in his hands. Perhaps Otzi was a leader who was overthrown as a result of conspiracy or intrigue, or a shaman killed during a ritual, or a criminal who met with revenge. His entire story is steeped in mystery and tragedy. And the most surprising thing, why did the killers, having completed their deed, not steal the most valuable thing Otzi had? Why did they leave his copper axe, the main symbol of power of that time? This small detail still haunts scientists, raising many questions and hypotheses. Otzi ranks second on the list of mysteries because his fate is a perfect combination of science and drama, a window into the complex and brutal world of our ancestors. His story is not just an ancient legend, but a vivid reminder that deep in the ages, human passions and vices remained unchanged. The thirst for power, revenge, betrayal, they all existed then, as they do today, and have not disappeared over time. We have reached the pinnacle of our knowledge, and at the top of the list of mysteries is not an artifact, not a body or a ship, but an entire world. This is a world sealed in ice for 15 million years. This world is capable of harboring life forms unlike any on Earth, and it may hold the answer to the ultimate question: are we alone in the universe? This is Lake Vostok, a giant freshwater lake located under a 4-kilometer thick layer of ice in the heart of Antarctica, directly beneath the eponymous Russian polar station. Its size is astonishing. It stretches 250 kilometers in length and reaches 50 kilometers in width. Its area is comparable to that of Lake Ontario. With a depth of over 1,000 meters, it is one of the largest lakes on the planet, completely hidden from human eyes. Its existence was predicted back in the 1960s, but definitive evidence was only obtained in 1996 using satellite radar systems. Since then, Lake Vostok has become a true holy grail for scientists around the world, a source of incredible discoveries. Why? Because it is a unique, isolated ecosystem that practically does not interact with the outside world. Perhaps life on our planet could have developed not only through the classical scheme of photosynthesis, where plants use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into energy and organic substances. Instead, there is a hypothetical possibility of life forms based on a completely different mechanism: chemosynthesis. This process involves obtaining energy not from sunlight, but from chemical reactions occurring in the environment, especially in the presence of minerals and chemical compounds contained in rocks. This method of nutrition is characteristic of certain microbes, extremophiles, whose biology and metabolism have evolved in complete isolation in extreme conditions over an infinitely long period exceeding 15 million years. These organisms can exist in a biosphere completely alien to us, which, despite its unusual nature, may prove crucial for understanding possible forms of life beyond Earth. This is why Lake Vostok attracts such keen interest from astrobiologists worldwide. The conditions within this unique body of water closely resemble those believed to exist on Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus. In these icy worlds, liquid oceans are hidden beneath thick layers of ice, which, according to our hypotheses, may serve as potential havens for life. If scientists manage to find signs of life there, it would significantly increase the likelihood that life could exist on other icy moons in our solar system, where similar conditions create isolated and extreme environments for the development of microorganisms. Accessing such a hidden world is an incredibly complex and challenging task, requiring immense effort, technology, and patience. Russian scientists have tirelessly engaged in drilling at the Vostok station, located in the heart of the Antarctic ice, for decades. Their goal was truly ambitious: to penetrate the 4-kilometer thick ice without contaminating the unique water inside the lake. It was a real race against time and technology, an attempt to overcome ecological and technological boundaries. Finally, in 2012, scientists succeeded in reaching the surface of this lost world, drilling through the ice layer and bringing the first water samples to the surface. When these samples were examined, scientists discovered signs of life, more than 3,500 species of microorganisms, many of which were previously unknown to science. These included bacteria, archaea, and even fungi, indicating that this hidden world beneath the ice is not lifeless, but rather teeming with life and activity. The discovery of Lake Vostok was not just a find, but a true breakthrough, as it opened a new field for research. It was a portal to another, previously inaccessible world hidden within our own planet. It can be said that this is our own Europa, which we have finally managed to reach. The study of this mysterious world is only beginning, and many questions remain for scientists. What other secrets does it hold? Is it possible for more complex organisms than microorganisms to exist there? What lessons about resilience and the limits of life can it teach us? And how can we perceive the lifeless and white expanses of Antarctica, vast areas covered in ice, without considering that right beneath them, under kilometers of ice, there might be an entire lost world that has been waiting for its discovery for more than 15 million years? It is truly an astonishing thought, as it compels us to reconsider our views on the boundaries of the possible and fills us with new hopes for further discoveries. Thank you to everyone who watched this story to the end. Your support, attention, and interest are very important to us. Please remember the importance of sharing our materials and keeping them in mind so as not to miss new discoveries and news that could change our understanding of the world. Stay attentive and always stay with us, as there are still many amazing discoveries and important events ahead.